Okay. So we're going over ZvT, and we're just going to talk about some habits in the early game and mid game that cause you to fall behind. And because you're talking about how once you get to the late game, it's kind of hard to get into a macro game that you can really utilize all of your resources.
Yeah, honestly, I think my late game is pretty much fine if I'm not interrupted.
Gotcha.
Like when I'm not distracted or anything, there's not too much happening in the early and mid game, and I get to a fine drone count. I think my macro is pretty fine.
Cool. That sounds about right. I mean, if the Terran just lets you go completely uninterrupted, you should be fine. Okay, so very first thing, you should pull off gas here.
Yes.
I don't know if you always do that or if you just did it late this game or what, but you should pull off gas here unless you're gonna go for a fast layer. Okay, you do it. Okay, fantastic, great. So here's a tendency that I noticed in that last game that is very well exemplified here. Now, when you see this Reaper come in, you have a tendency to over-micro the fights and then lose sight of the next big thing that's supposed to happen. Usually, it's something like an inject, but in this case, it's getting your third base down. So literally, right here, if you had just rallied the drone to the third, not built the third base, but just rallied the drone to the third, you would have been able to drop a hatchery right as soon as this engagement is done. And you were about to do it, but then you pulled your lings back to come deal with the Reaper, but you forgot to send the drone. And now you're going to build this spore. And now you're going to chase this Reaper and pull a ling back, as you should.
Yeah.
And you injected, which is very good.
In most games, I actually sent the 20th drone to the third base location right away.
Gotcha. But yeah, now your third is just pretty ridiculously late. Like, it's at least 20 seconds late now.
By the way, I'm kind of confused about the third base timing because there's a lot of builds where it varies a lot, I think. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes you take it at 28 supply, sometimes at 32, and
yeah, it depends on your overall fancy. I usually take it earlier. I usually take it around. Yeah, I guess I take mine at 28 supply. Some people take it at 32. Some people take it at 30. It depends on when you get your ling speed and when you can afford the base. But I usually take it at 28. It's up to you. But this is going to be slightly later than I think you'd like. Okay, that queen is... You probably should build this queen a little bit earlier. Probably about the same time that this queen actually pops is when you should get this second queen. Now... Here in this situation, what are you thinking right now when you see two Reapers?
Panic.
Yeah, but like, do you think that your opponent is going for mass Reapers? Do you think that they're just building these two Reapers to put on some pressure and stop?
I mean, it's really unusual. I don't face this a lot, and I haven't really scouted the way the Reapers were coming from, but I do see another CC, so it's probably not really a cheese. Yeah, but I'm about to overreact to this a lot. Like, I'm building way too many links where I don't need them. Like, honestly, I should have been fine with the queens I got there in the Zerglings.
Yeah, I think
from the main.
Right. If I saw just two Reapers here at this timing, I would think that it's just an additional Reaper for pressure. It's not going to be a committed Reaper all in, and I would probably build 12 lings tops and then be fine. Let's see how many you build. And by the way, the reason that I'll sometimes ask you about your thought process, it's not that your decisions are wrong. It's that the reason why you build them matters. Because like, if you said, for example, I see these two Reapers and now I'm going to build 12 lings because I think it's an all-in. That's different than saying I see these two Reapers and I'm going to build 12 lings because I think that it's just a two Reaper pressure. Because if you're doing the exact same outcome, but you're doing it off of two different motives, then that means that one of the reasons why you're doing those outcomes is wrong, and then if it was actually that alternative, you would be behind. You'd be in a bad position. And that's the only reason I'm clarifying.
So the thing with my reactions there is that it's just a very quick thought that makes me do it. Like
Yeah.
somewhere behind my brain, somewhere in my head, is like press the Z button, and then I do it. And after that, I realize I should have probably built drones here. And it's just like my fingers are faster than my brain sometimes, and that really hurts me as a Zerg. I mean, as a Terran, for example, you can just cancel the stuff. I mean, you're building stuff
Right.
simultaneously anyway. But
That's certainly true.
so yeah.
Yeah, this response so far is fine. Building 10 links here, I'm okay with it. That's fine. All right, so he's coming in towards the main. You have link speed now, so these two Reapers should basically 100% die. All right, so you should see this. I don't know if your camera's there now. You're probably not. But if you were to see this arrangement of buildings, what would you think is happening, and what would your reaction be?
So I see 2 barracks and a factory, so I'm assuming it's a 2-1-1.
Yep.
I think I'm going to drone up, like up until the 430 mark, and then build at 430 Zerglings.
Yep, that sounds great.
And,
Fantastic.
And Benling nest somewhere around 4 to 430 as well, basically.
Okay. The Baneling nest is not entirely necessary because your Banelings are going to have speed for a while, and trying to fight a 2-on-1 with slow Banelings is not going to work very well.
Yeah.
Also, I'm amazed you didn't kill either of those
Reapers.
Reapers.
Get back to the rule of 1 gas, where you basically defend everything with Zerglings and Queens for a while.
Okay, so here's another example of what I'm talking about. If you have 14 lings and you know that there's 2 Reapers, so those 6 lings right there, send them to where the Reapers are currently at. Then take the 8 lings that are at your natural and send them over here, and the Reapers will 100% die. Yep. Now, when you watch really, really, really excellent StarCraft players play this game, they'll not over-micro interactions like this. If they see these 2 Reapers, they will just A-move some lings here, A-move some lings here, and then they'll immediately go back to doing what they're doing, because it's not worth their APM. So here, let's go back to your perspective, and I want to watch how you approach these two. Reapers.
Swarm forces under attack.
Okay, now you're macroing again. So that was a good 30 seconds where you actually didn't build anything because you were so busy on trying to surround those 2 Reapers that you missed out on injecting both of your bases, building drones, and spreading creep. Actually, you didn't miss out on spreading creep, but you missed injecting both of your hatches and spending all of your larvae. Now, I don't know if you know the math about how larva production works.
So it naturally produces lava up until it's free. And after that, it doesn't do it automatically anymore. You need to inject even more. So the more time lava just sits, the more lava I'm losing, and not just having the stuff late.
Exactly. So what this means by extension is that every time your inject pops, you are no longer producing larvae. Every time your inject finishes, you're stuck. So spending your money and your larva is super important as soon as your inject pops, because once that's done, you will no longer be able to make new larvae. That is the most important time for you to spend your money right now. So if we go back here and take a look at this 30 seconds, your inject pops at 350. Let's say 350. So now you have 9 larvae that you can spend, and you're not making any new larvae for the next however many seconds. Okay, now you make larvae. Now you make units of 4 minutes. So you just lost 2 larvae in that engagement, and all of your drones that you're building are now 10 seconds late to mining. So that's actually a lot, because if you just built 9 drones there, and they take 10 more seconds to reach your third base, which is where I assume that you're rallying them, or it doesn't matter which base you're rallying them to, you have now lost almost 100 minerals and 2 larvae because you were focusing on those Reapers. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so that's going to stack up later in the game, because if you're 100 minerals behind right now, then that means that you could have squeezed out 2 more drones in a second, which meant that you could have squeezed out 3 more drones, 45 seconds on, or however long it is. Like, that all stacks exponentially. And these may seem like minor interactions that we're talking about, but when this gets to the mid game, it's going to be even more imperative that you don't miss spending your money at these critical junctures. Making sense so far?
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Let's move on.
Swarm forces
So you see the 2-on-1 and you're just droning, which is good. Okay, but now you're just missing a huge amount of inject time. And you have 3 queens. And you just got 2 injects off. That's good. And now you're building OVs. That's fine. I honestly would not take these lings and go do a counterattack. You did kill a couple of SCVs with this, but you want to try to lose as few lings as possible, because having more lings with the 2-on-1 push is going to help you a lot, and it's more important for you to focus on your macro instead of microing the lings. So if we go back and look at that from your perspective, you killed these 2 Reapers, and now this is good. I would have taken this queen right here to go inject instead of spreading a tumor here. You already have 2 tumors here, and it's more important to get more larvae at your third. But let's keep watching your perspective. So now, you spent all of your larvae. You're building all the queens. And now... Oh, you're not even looking at your lings. Okay, never mind. I thought you were going to over-micro your lings. Turns out you're not looking at it at all. You're redistributing drones. Cool. Great.
Swarm forces under attack.
Again, the baneling nest is not really what you want here, because you're only going to have slow banelings against the initial push of the Marines, which will not help you. And it's better to just have more queens and more links. Okay, you just spent...
When do you think I should go for the lair here and the baneling nest then?
I usually go for the lair and the baneling nest as soon as I build a round of queens at about... I build a round of queens at maybe like 445 or something like that, and then as soon as the queen pops in the main, I'll build the lair right after that. And keep developing. But like right here is a good example where as soon as you get done with this, you have 4 larvae that are ready to spend. You have 15 available supply, and you're going to spend a lot of time here just attacking the supply depot. And as soon as you see this amount of Marines, instead of pulling your lings completely back, you're still trying to kill the supply depot. And then maybe this SCV. Maybe you can get a little bit more out of this SCV. But you're now at 700 minerals. And you have 8 available larvae. And your inject's about to pop. Actually, your inject did pop at your main. But all of that means that you're now just that much further behind for when the actual attack happens. And you did not kill the SCV or the supply depot.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea why my mechanics suck so much in ZvT, because honestly, like when I'm playing ZvZ, I think I'm spending my lava really well. For some reason, I don't do it in ZvT.
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier to spend your larva in ZvZ, because in ZvZ, you're usually having a lower drone count and less macro overall to do. Usually there's just less actual spending that needs to happen, because overall you're not building as many drones. Unless you're playing like 4-base Lurker Viper ZvZ, which is really fun and cool, but
yeah, that rarely happens.
Yeah. This drone investment is quite ballsy here, because you did just lose all of your lings on the other side of the map, and it's pretty close to 5 minutes, which means his medevacs are probably going to be done, his stim's getting pretty close to done, and you're going to have no units here. You will have 6 queens, which is nice, but perhaps building some lings here would have been prudent. Building this lair timing is fine. Now you're still building drones. Okay, that's a really bad idea.
Yeah. I think I was
the OVs are good.
that game, and I was like, shit, I should have built links here.
Yeah. Yeah, so now what you're gonna have to do is do another round of injects and pull all your queens. Okay, don't spread the overlords. If you're gonna, so first of all, if you're gonna have overlords on a hotkey and to drop creep on the other side of the map, that's fine. Or to drop creep in the middle of the map, that's also fine. But get in the habit of building an overlord and then just right-clicking from the egg to rally it somewhere, instead of having all of your overlords go to a rally point and then box and then, you know, double-clicking them and then spreading them across the map later. You want to get more in the habit of just, especially with your initial overlords, you want to build one and then right-click somewhere on the map. Build another one and then right-click somewhere else on the map. And then they'll go there and then you won't have to do this bit of micro here later. Because right now you have 7 larvae that you're not spending right now because you're trying to spread these overlords out. Now you're building lings. But now these lings are going to be really late and your queens are going to be out of position and this 2-1-1 is going to absolutely screw you over. Or it should. Like, it really, really should. Okay. Oh, no. By the way, one thing I would recommend before we look at this fight, which is probably going to cause a devastating loss. One thing I would recommend is, as soon as you get your first couple overlords around the map, put an overlord here in this dead airspace and put an overlord here in this dead airspace. And maybe even an overlord like here and here as well. Like, obviously not as important as the outer ones, but you're going to want something here in case there's a medevac or a liberator or something like that comes in. You're going to want to see it with this overlord. You had absolutely no idea that this attack was happening because you had nothing up here for vision. And one overlord there can give you a precious couple additional seconds of reaction time, which is super, super important. All right, I'm going back to your perspective now. Let's take a look and see how you deal with this attack. Yeah, you just don't have enough shit here. This is not going to end well. Okay, well, actually, it ends better than I thought it would. Cool. Okay, so now you're going to over-micro this fight and you're going to float a bunch of money. This is your biggest problem right now. Is every time you take a fight and every time there's a little bit of micro, your macro just slips entirely. You have 1,200 minerals right now. So right now, you should be taking a 4th base or building some Evo chambers or getting more lings or scouting. Like, there's so many other things that you need to be doing with your money right now that's not happening because you're going to over-micro this fight. And it makes sense because, like, this is a very credible threat, but you don't need to worry about this too much. What's more important is just spending your money. And you're still not, you're at 1,500 minerals. You're still at 1,500 minerals. You're at 1,600 minerals. You're at 1,700 minerals. You're at 1,800 minerals. 1,800 minerals in 6 minutes is why you're losing this game. It's not because the 2-on-1 caught you blindsided or anything like that. It's because you're just not spending your money.
Like, I'm completely aware of this. This is every ZvT for me. It's not that the Terrans are killing me. It's I kill myself every time.
Yeah. Good. All right. So I'm glad you're spending your money, kind of, but like at this point, it's too late. So let's go back here and do some math. I want to look at when you stop spending your money. I'm going to just look at the production tab here for a bit, and I'm just going to speed along. You build 12 lings here. And then you build 16 more lings here. Okay. And now you're building 3 banelings. Yeah, so it's basically right there at that time. Okay, you start building again at 622. When did you build the 16 lings? You spent them at 5, let's say 535. So 535 to 622 is 45 seconds worth of time. So your inject pops unevenly across your hatcheries, but let's say it pops here at 550. So now you have 11 larvae that you need to spend because none of your hatcheries are producing larvae right now. And now these 2 injects are going to pop. So now you have 14 larvae that you're not spending. And now you spend all of your larvae. So in that 45 seconds, you missed out on an additional... Am I doing the math right? Yeah, you're missing out on an additional 14 larvae, basically. You could have had, at this part where you spent your money right here, you could have had an additional 14 larvae, which meant that you could have had not 14 drones in production, but you could have had 14 drones and 14 pairs of lings in production. Or you could have had 14 drones, 14 lings, and 2 bases in production. And that actually probably would have spent all of your minerals. And that all just comes from the fact that you didn't spend your money when it made sense to spend your money. And now everything behind that is delayed. Making sense so far?
Totally. I don't know why I don't really get in the habit of spending my lava when they pop. Like a lot of times my macro cycle is really just halfway through. Like I inject and then I don't build stuff. I don't know why I don't get the habit straight. My macro mechanics are just really atrocious.
Yeah. It's just because this game requires a lot of attention in a lot of places at once, which means that every time you take an engagement, you're not thinking about the macro, which is really unfortunate because that's way, way more important to focus on than any of the micro. I'm just going to point out that this Liberator here that's attacking your natural, it's very uncommon for the Terran to build a Liberator with a 2-1-1 because it's way better to just keep building Medivacs because they're going to want more healing for the bio push. So I don't know why he built a Liberator here, but don't worry about not building spores at 430. You only build spores at 430 if they open 1-1-1. But that is something that you should be doing. But here it's fine. I don't know why he built this Liberator either. You're going to lose a lot of drones from it, but I'm not like going to be like, well, why didn't you build a spore card? Like, you shouldn't have needed to build one. But yeah, I'm not going to say that you're dead at this point, but this is already a lot of damage that you've taken. And that damage is mostly self-inflicted because you just weren't spending your money. Let's talk about the next reason that you're losing games in the mid game. And that is poor queen management. So I want to look at, as soon as you spend these 14 drones here at 622, let's just look at your hatches and how often you're injecting them for the next minute or so. So you're getting a macro hatch, that's fine. Okay, so you're free to inject. You're free to inject. You haven't injected in a while. And obviously you're using the queens for defense. I understand that. But this is a long, long time to go with no injects. And now you can't spend your money again. So previously you couldn't spend your money because you forgot to spend it when the inject popped, and then you were larva capped. But now you can't spend it because you don't have any larva because you weren't injecting the whole time. And queen management is super, super important in ZvT. It's probably more important to use your queens correctly in ZvT than it is in any other matchup, because the amount of creep spread and the amount of larva that you need in ZvT is realistically higher than what it needs to be in any other matchup. ZVP is a very close second, but like in ZvZ, you don't need like constant attention on your creep spread in 99% of circumstances. And you usually have fewer hatches in general, so you're not having to inject as much. So the fact that you need your queens to really be on point in ZvT is probably an indicator that that's one of the reasons why you're losing ZvTs, is because you're just having these large periods where you have either no creep or no larva. Because your creep spread right now is not very good, and your larva there's just no injects happening and haven't been for a bit. And part of that's because you're just holding off this pressure and forgetting that your queens need to keep doing stuff. So now you're in a position where as soon as you've cleaned up all of the nonsense, you are now down to 16 drones from that Liberator, and you have no larva, which means that you can't even get your economy back up, even though you have the money to. And all of these attacks, by the way, would be much easier to hold if you had better creep. A lot of people think of creep as a speed boost for Zerg, which it absolutely is, but not many people think of creep as a damage boost for Zerg, and that's what it really is. Because when you think about it, creep means that your units are moving faster, which means your units are reaching the engagement faster. If your units are reaching the engagement faster, they are doing damage faster, and that is a damage increase. So don't think of creep so much as a speed boost. Think of it as a damage increase. If you've got Ling Bane on creep, you are doing more damage per second than if your Lings and Banes are off creep. That make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay, great. So far, just over analyzing the minutia of the micro and not using your queens is why you're really, really behind in this game. And you can still win this. It is possible. It just requires you to... It requires you to do what I like to call playing the game and not the player. At my MMR, and an MMR that's much higher than me, it is way more important to just focus on your own mechanics and your own side of the map and things like that than anything your opponent is doing. Yes, it's nice that you scouted the 2-1-1 and that you had lings in time to deal with that, but at any given moment, your main focus should be the top right corner of your map and saying, okay, how do I get these money values as low as I can get them and get the supply as high as I can get them? And if you focus on that by using your queens correctly, you're going to be in a much better position no matter what. And if you just A-move an engagement and focus on that, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be better than over-microing the engagement. Taking another base. Honestly, you have a tendency to take too many hatcheries. I think the reason that you take too many hatcheries is because you have trouble defending the ones that you have, and you always want a backup place to be able to go. But if you just had better creep spread, you would not need to take so many hatcheries. And if you spent your money better, you would not need to take so many hatcheries.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically the reason I take those hatcheries, because I do have the money and I need to spend it somehow, right?
Right. But even still, it's better to just get more units. And a lot of that is, again, because you just don't have the larva. Like, this Liberator has killed 17 units. Yeah, like, not having creep spread in the middle is why you're going to lose this base. Creep spread is just so completely essential. You're going to over-micro those banelings and miss the fact that you're floating 1,100 minerals right now. You're going to micro these queens over here and miss the fact that you're floating 1,200 minerals right now. There we go. Good. And, like, this is a lot of stuff that's happening. I mean, you're using 270 APM right now, which is very good. And this is a lot that you have to pay attention to. But the fact that your opponent is this far ahead of you is because you weren't focusing on your macro enough in the earlier parts of the game. Oh, no. Replacing those spores is not the priority. That was actually quite nice. Wow, that worked a million times better than I thought it was going to. Holy crap. Okay. Wow. Maybe I should do that more often. Thanks for the coaching.
You're welcome, buddy.
Yeah, your biggest priority right now is to get more queens and replace your creep. And have just enough banelings to hold off the attack. And just keep spreading your creep. That is the most important thing for you right now. And obviously at this point, like, you don't have evos either. And that's such an afterthought at this point because you can't afford any of that now. But your biggest priority now is just spreading your creep and having just enough units to survive while popping just enough drones out to your mineral lines to get a big enough economy to contest what he has. God only knows whether he has a third base right now. You have no idea because you haven't scouted. You have a tendency to put your overlords in the middle of the map, and that is nice for vision, but that will get picked off later, and you don't want to be losing overlords for no reason. It's better to just rely on your creep spread for that. So your injects and creep are going to be the bigger thing to work on here. And anytime you get a lair, no matter what matchup it is, but even for ZvT, anytime you get a lair, find an overlord that's closest to your opponent's side of the map, build an overseer, shift rally it into the main, figure out what's going on. Because
you really need to use more overseers.
Yep. You either need to figure out if he's getting a 4th CC or if he's just going like an 8 rack Sullen. If he's going for an 8 rack Sullen, then saturating this 4th base and just holding this 4th base is enough to win you this game. But you don't know that because you have not scouted for it. Overemphasizing the micro and missing a lot of queen-based macro is what's causing you to lose these games. And the same thing applies in the game that you just played with the mutas, by the way. A lot of that game is not because you didn't have the money to do everything. It's because you didn't have the creep spread to take good engagements, and you didn't have the larva to actually spend the money that you did have. Because you actually had a pretty decent amount of money that whole game. But now you just don't have anything. Alright.
So 2-1-1, do I saturate the 3rd base completely?
I do, but you don't necessarily have to. You just want to make sure that you have about 30 lings by the 5-minute mark. That's the goal. And then develop from there. I mean,
we go for the 5-minute mark, 30 Zerglings, and then you're gonna keep droning again, right?
Yeah. Good. All right. So let's just take a look at a couple of differences. Oh, and you pulled all the way off of gas too. Nice. Greedy boy. Excellent. Love it. Even though I did not pull entirely off of gas and I built 2 lings immediately at the very beginning and you squeezed out 2 drones slightly faster than I did, you will notice that my creep is slightly further out and I have 51 drones to 41 drones right now. And I'm already ready to start building lings for the 2-on-1 while having 3 fully saturated mineral lines and 2 more queens than you right now. You should not have taken a 4th base in this scenario for any reason. If you see there's a 2-on-1, taking a 4th base is the last thing you want to spend your money on. You want to spend it on more drones, more lings, and more queens, not on a 4th base, because the chances of you living through the attack while taking a 4th base is extremely small. Also, taking the baneling nest is not necessarily the right move because you're not going to want banelings for the attack. So right now, when this 2-on-1 is going to hit, you're going to have 32 lings and 7 queens. I'm going to have 48 lings and 9 queens. I'm going to have more creep spread than you. And my 4th base is slower and my lair is slower. Like, my tech is overall slower. But with the build that I've done, I am 100% safe against this 2-on-1. If a Terran attacks right now with 2 medevacs of 16 Marines of 522, I have so many units right now that I can very easily hold this. If there's 2 medevacs that pop up in my main, which I didn't put an Overlord here, which I should have. I have creep spread up here, which is good. But if the 2 drop ships, Jesus Christ, pop up in my main, I can A-move with those lings and just go back to doing something else, like getting my upgrades, which is what I'm starting right now. So you have a decent amount here, and what you have will probably hold a 2-on-1. But I overbuilt what I needed to hold the 2-on-1 just so that if a 2-on-1 happens, I don't have to micro the fight. If 16 Marines pop out, I can A-move with 48 lings, and those Marines will do absolutely nothing. He will pick up immediately, and he'll just run away. And by the way, if you're struggling with the whole they drop, or I'll do it on your side of the map, if they attack your 4th base and then they drop in your main and then they go back and forth between here, just put your queen, when they go to your main, A-move with the lings, and then place your queens at the mineral line at your 4th base, so then when they try to go down the ledge, the queens will just shoot down the medevacs. And then they'll be forced to come over here, and then your lings will have time to circle around to help with the defense of your 4th base. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So your evos are a little bit late. Against a 2-on-1, I would say 6 minutes is like the absolute latest that you should take them, but realistically, you should probably get them at 5:30 if you can, because you're gonna want upgrades later in the game. The Terran is probably has already started 1-1, maybe 15 seconds ago or so. So I would get your evos a little bit sooner. So you're getting evos now. You're getting your baneling speed. Very good. I should be getting my baneling speed now. Taking a 6 base. I like it. Okay, so now I want you to just tab back and forth between the vision of the 2 of us. Just go back and forth between my vision and your vision. And I want you to just look at the difference.
Yep.
I can see basically this whole map if the Terran is leaving me uninterrupted. I also am building an Overseer right now so that I can go scout the main. And I'm building the Overseer with the Overlord that's just south of your current base. But with this amount of creep spread, and with the Overlord placement that I have, I can see this entire map. And if the Terran attacks me at any point, I know exactly where they are. Furthermore, I forgot to do it, I actually do it later in this game, but I send a Ling to go take the watchtowers as well on this map. So I will just have complete and full vision of this map at any time. And if the Terran attacks me anywhere, I can see it miles ahead of time, split my units in case I need to, and just take a much better engagement than you will. But that's just the difference in creep spread. Let's go and keep going. Okay, the Spire's nice. If you're going to go for Spire, I would take the gases at your 4th base. Yeah, your macro's actually pretty decent here. Which is good, because what this means is that if you spend less time microing the fights, you can have this amount of supply at 8 minutes. Like, think of the amount of supply that you had at 8 minutes against the Terran that you just played.
I'd rather not.
Yeah, and now look at the supply you have. You have 77 army supply right now, and this army is just monstrous against the 2-1-1. Now, granted, again, there is no micro that you had to do against a Terran with the 2-1-1 right now, but if you had like the size of army that I had when the 2-1-1 happened, you wouldn't have to micro it. You could just A move and then go back to whatever you were doing, which is so much easier. You killed one of my ovies, you bastard. It's my own fault.
I didn't do it on purpose.
I know, it's my own fault. I cannot emphasize enough just how much this will help you. If you get your creep spread out this far against a Terran, they cannot do anything. And all of this vision makes it impossible to get surprised by drops, by the way. So if you find that you're struggling with like multi-prong Terran drops, if you have this much vision, the Terran cannot surprise you with a drop. You will see it coming on your minimap from a mile away, and you'll just be able to pull like 20 lings, alt-tab them into a group, send them into your main to not die to the drop, and just patrol them, and you'll be totally fine. So prioritizing this is going to be really, really key for you. I would drop your infestation pit at maybe 8.5, 9 minutes if you can, so that you can start getting to hive pretty soon. But your +1 is rather late. So if you were to take an engagement right here, like obviously you have a monstrous army supply, but it will be a slightly riskier engagement for you. And again, we're both going to max out here. We're both going to max out. My army is slightly better because it just has better upgrades. And more of my army is on the ground. And I have enough gas here to build quite a lot of banelings, even though it's not going to be as much gas as you have because you're going for mutas, which is a very gas heavy build. But I just have much better upgrades, and overall I will win this fight. I also have 12 hydras in my army that will help a lot. That are almost fully upgraded, and I'm going to have a much faster hive, ultra cavern, adrenal glands, things like that. So your development is good. I'm glad that you can max out this quickly. This is actually very nicely done on the max out. And if you just concentrate more on that sort of principle of maxing out and less on over microing fights, you're going to move up very quickly in your MMR. But even here, just in your isolated game where you're playing this sort of play style, the biggest thing to work on in terms of this, because like the reason that we're doing this is because you don't have to focus on taking engagements and you don't have to focus on scouting. All you have to focus on is macro. And when you focus on your macro, you can max out at 8.5 minutes with Lingbane Muta against a 2-1-1, which is really excellent. Like that's actually very, very good. But even here, you need to focus on your creep spread a little bit more because again, look at the difference in vision. It's just not even close.
I normally do it a little bit better than in this game.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But not closely.
Yeah.
To yours.
Yeah. So you can use this as you can now use this replay as a benchmark for what your vision could look like if you prioritize it a little bit more as you're doing your macro. But overall, a very nice max out. And again, just focusing on these principles a little bit more will get you so much further in your gameplay. Cool.
Cool.
Alrighty. Very nicely done, buddy. But I hope you enjoyed the coaching, and I'll see you around, buddy.